If you can afford to buy land, you can decide what happens on it. But that doesn't really seem to be the case. The land might be yours, but the restrictions, permissions, access rights and planning history often arrived long before you did. Because once you actually try to buy land and use it for off-grid living, the system starts behaving very differently. Are you buying freedom, or are you buying someone else's restrictions? Living on the road, waterways or off-grid in the UK, Dickie Dread. And this is part 22 in the video series, chapter 3, Living on the Land or Water, Parking Up and Planning Reality. It's quite a long one today because I want to, it's about how to find and buy land, and there's a lot to cover, and I didn't want to split it up into multiple videos, so I'm going to try and cover it all, but it shouldn't be too long. Right, so finding land, where it actually comes from. So most people start by searching online listings. This is the most visible route, but it is only part of the picture. The type of land that appears on the open market is often the land that has already failed to find another use, or that carries constraints which limit its value. Common sources include the following: estate agents and land websites. Mainstream agents and specialist rural sites list plots of agricultural land, woodland and small holdings. These are easy to access but should be treated cautiously. Listings often emphasise potential rather than current permission. And phrases such as off-grid opportunity or lifestyle use do not indicate the residential use is allowed. Auctions. Land is frequently sold at auctions, sometimes at lower prices. This can include surplus agricultural land, repossessions and land with access or title issues. Auctions move quickly and usually require a commitment before full investigation, so they carry a higher risk if you've not checked the details in advance. Direct approach. Some of the most workable arrangements never appear on the open market. Approaching landowners directly can sometimes lead to informal agreements, long-term leases and opportunities tied to existing land use. This is slower and less certain, but it avoids some of the competition and pricing pressures of the open market. Local knowledge. Talking to people in the area, farmers, neighbours, smallholders, can reveal opportunities that are not publicly advertised. It can also give you a clearer picture of how the land is actually used and perceived. And it's not in the book, but get down the local pub, sit with the locals, talk to the locals, and you can find out a lot of information down there. Existing sites and shared arrangements. In some cases, land is accessed through existing small holdings, community projects and shared or cooperative arrangements. This may not involve outright purchase but can provide a practical route into land-based living. Social media and informal networks. A growing number of opportunities appear through social media rather than formal listings. Platforms such as Facebook groups, Instagram posts and messaging networks are often used to share land for sale or use, temporary pitches or informal sites, small holding or off-grid opportunities, and requests for help or collaboration. These routes can provide access to arrangements that never reach the open market. They are often more flexible and may involve lower upfront costs or shared use. However, they also carry higher uncertainty. Information may be incomplete, informal or based on assumption rather than verified planning status. Agreements are sometimes verbal, short-term or poorly defined. What is presented as an opportunity may, in practice, have no legal basis for residential use. As with all land, the same checks apply. Planning status, access, title restrictions and local context still determine what is possible, regardless of how the opportunity is found. We'll cover that in a bit. So what to expect? Land that is cheap, remote or described as flexible often comes with constraints. Land that already has clear residential permission is rare and usually expensive. In practice, there is always a trade-off between price, restrictions, location and what is realistically possible. Understanding that trade-off early helps avoid chasing options that were never viable to begin with. Before committing to any land, the next step is to understand what is already attached to it, legally, physically, and in terms of how it can be seen by others. So buying land, what to check before you commit. Finding land that looks suitable is not the same as finding land that can be used in the way you intend. Many of the most significant constraints are already attached to the land before you arrive. By the time you discover them, you may already own it. Most problems in this area do not come from complex law, but from simple assumptions that quiet land can be lived on, that woodland offers freedom, or that off-grid potential means residential use. In practice, what matters is not how land looks, but what is legally attached to it and how it is seen by others. So accessing the paperwork. Before doing anything else, obtain the title documents. Really important. In England and Wales, these can be downloaded for HM Land Registry for a small fee, and it was about £3 last time I did one. The key documents are the title register. This sets out the ownership, rights, covenants and restrictions, and the title plan, which shows the boundaries and access routes. In Scotland, the equivalent records are held by Registers of Scotland. In Northern Ireland, they are held by Land and Property Services. These documents are not optional background reading. They are the legal baseline for what you can and cannot do. Do not buy anything unless you've got these registers documents. Planning status and use. Check how the land is currently classified and whether there have been previous applications. And you can find all that on the government websites. So what is the lawful use? Agricultural, forestry or residential? Have there been refusals for dwellings or caravans? Is there any ongoing or past enforcement? Local authority planning portals usually allow you to search by location. Past refusals are often more informative than approvals. The covenants and title restrictions. Covenants are private legal restrictions attached to the land. They are separate from planning law and can be just as important. They may restrict residential use, caravans or mobile homes, business activity and buildings of any kind. They often remain in force indefinitely and bind future owners. Even if planning permission is granted, a restrictive covenant can still prevent its use. Access. Access is one of the most common hidden problems. Is there a legal right of access or just a track? Is access limited to agricultural use? Who maintains it? Is it wide enough for vehicles, or your vehicle more specifically, and people that are going to have to deliver? Without lawful access, development and even regular use can become difficult or impossible. And I remember I pulled out of a bit of land in Buryport because I'd never have got my horse box on it. Public rights of way. Footpaths, bridleways and byways increase visibility. More people passing through means more attention. More attention means a higher chance of complaint. I wouldn't touch anything with a right of way going through it, to be honest. You just have no idea who's going to turn up and start sniffing around. What feels secluded on first visit may not be in practice. Ask yourself a simple question. If sitting on your land enjoying some peace, are you happy for a bunch of noisy ramblers to walk through? I know I wouldn't be. Designations and constraints. Many sites sit within overlapping layers of control. They may include greenbelt, national park or protected landscape, site of specific scientific interest, ancient woodland, tree preservation orders. These do not always prevent use, but they significantly raise the threshold for any form of development or change. So watch them. Services and infrastructure. Even low-impact living requires basic systems. It could be water sources, waste disposal, vehicle access year-round, storage and shelter. The absence of these does not remove regulation. It often makes compliance harder. Neighbours' visibility. What matters is not just what you do, but who can see it. Nearby houses or farms, public viewpoints, regular foot traffic. A site that is overlooked is more likely to attract attention once activity begins. Existing permissions and history. Look for anything already attached to the land. Agricultural buildings, prior approvals, temporary permissions and previous uses. These can sometimes support future applications, but they also indicate past problems. marketing and reality. Land is often marketed using language that suggests flexibility, off-grid potential, lifestyle opportunity, ideal for weekend use. These descriptions do not create any legal right to live on the land. Estate agents are selling a product, not granting permission. The legal position comes from planning status and title restrictions, not from how the land is described in a listing. The gap between marketing and reality is where people get caught out. Practical reality. Most constraints are not hidden, but they are easy to overlook. They sit in the documents, designations and context rather than the appearance of the land itself, and rarely in the adverts. Checking these early is usually the difference between a workable plan and a dead end. Land can offer real opportunities, but only when the limits are understood as clearly as possible. So timescales and the buying process. So buying land is often assumed to be quicker than buying a house. In practice, it can take just as long and sometimes longer. And I'll be honest with you, I almost had a nervous breakdown buying mine. It took months and months and months, and so much legal shit you wouldn't believe. Even relatively simple purchases can stretch several months. Delays commonly arise from title checks and historic issues, access rights and boundary clarification, covenants and restrictions, searches with local authorities, and slow communication between solicitors. And mine was just an absolute prick that I was buying it from. And he held up the process in unbelievable ways. It's all in my book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One Flew Into the Cuckoo's Nest. Where land is unregistered, split into multiple titles, or has unclear access, the process can become significantly slower. It's not unusual for purchases to take 6 to 9 months, even without a chain. Auctions can appear faster, but they simply move the legal work to the front. You are expected to have checked everything in advance, and once the bid is accepted, completion is usually fixed within a short time frame. I wouldn't dream of going to an auction personally. I just wouldn't take the risk. The key point is that land transactions often involve uncertainty that only becomes visible once the process has started. What looks straightforward at viewing stage can take time to resolve. Take the time. In practice, patience is part of the process. Rushing rarely speeds things up and can increase the risk of missing something important. Remember, I got chronic repetitive strain injury from looking at my emails so often. So finding land is often the easy part. Understanding what comes attached to it is much harder. Ownership may be less about freedom and more about navigating layers of existing control, which means the issues may not just be about buying land and checking titles or securing access, but whether ordinary people can realistically create alternative ways of living at all. Now, clearly you can, but it's hard. How much freedom does ownership really provide? Okay, next up in chapter 3, we got living on the land or water, parking up and planning reality still, and we're going to cover permitted development and its limits.